Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Hello, this is Tika Lark Fleming, and we're having a special edition of the Black Girl Show on Saturday. So I'm really happy that you guys are all awake. It's not really that early, but I know it's early for my friends. Our guest today is Erin Kaplan. No, Aubrey Kaplan. I always do that. And Jeremy Tevelon. I was so concerned about Jeremy's name. I was like messing up your name over and over again. I'm like, why? And I didn't even write your name that way. Anyway. No, I didn't. Okay. But before that, we're going to do Breaking the Table. And we're going to start off with Breaking the Table. And the title of it is Respectability Politics in Disguise. We need to figure out a way to encourage people to do political actions like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and by boycotting them, and not in this next breath denigrate the community by mocking people. It is great that we have actions. It is great that we understand that Black Friday and Cyber Monday is part of brutal capitalism and impacts and supports racism, sexism, and classism. What is not great is calling the public stupid for shopping. What is not great is generalized nasty comments that have the expectation that people won't participate. There are memes being passed around, often by progressive Black people, calling Black people who shop ghetto, ignorant, and it's disturbing and cruel. The dehumanizing way of talking to people and interacting with the community is not okay, and is regularly how people in charge talk to people. Your advanced degree, your seat at the figurative master's table, and your Highlander status as a Black representative according to the white media does not give you the right to disrespect the community for the good of the community. The talking at people and preaching to us in an aggressive manner is from slavery. Do you think to make Black people listen to you, you have to embody the persona of the overseer? That's what the truth talk is. The community is not your dog. Have an expectation for Black people that is beyond us not being murdered. I personally have an expectation that Black people with bigger crumbs stop aiding and abetting white supremacy. Activities like gentrification, fracking, violation of Black people's First, 14th, and 4th Amendment rights are what we need to be talking about. I don't give a damn if someone is wearing their pants on the ground. I don't care if you're not married and have 17 kids by 8 different men. That's your business. And you're right, and I'm not judging you, because if it weren't for brutal capitalism and racism, it would be a non-issue. Inglewood has a gang injunction. Cleveland has a gang injunction. Los Angeles has a gang injunction. A gang injunction gives the police essentially carte blanche to kill Black people. But we don't talk about the Black politicians that support gang injunctions. If you have a platform to wag your finger, at least wag it at the people and the policies that are behind the oppression of the community. Stop judging people in the same manner that corporate America and the white supremacy does. Stop using standards of white supremacy to judge us. If people are like the people who are failing, terms like single mother, food desert, ghetto, urban, not only denigrate Black people and our neighborhood, it erases us. It pathologizes Black culture and Black people. Stop figuring out new ways to push respectability politics. Have you not learned yet that racism has zero to do with Black people's behavior? And have expectations beyond Black people not dying and not getting diabetes. If your hope for the Black community is that we not be murdered by the police, you don't have much hope. Support the First Amendment and the Black community. Black people should be allowed to speak at public meetings. We should be allowed to have a different opinion. We should be allowed to assemble in groups of more than 2, and that's not happening. The Black community's rights are regularly being violated at every public meeting. Anytime we assert our rights, not only are we flogged, but we are told to apologize to the oppressor for being so rude. We can only speak up if a child is murdered or if the police almost kill us. That's the only time we can talk. Fuck that noise. Fuck that, and fuck anyone who thinks that. The Black community should have cultural programs that aren't centered around dying and pathologizing narratives. Black people being murdered by police doesn't start with police. It starts with very rich, wealthy men when they decide that we don't matter. If you can't wag your finger at the wealthy because they fund you, then at the bare minimum, keep your finger down and your hypothetical mouth shut. Oh, hypocritical mouth shut. All right. That is the end of Breaking the Table. And up next, we're going to have Aaron Aubrey Kaplan.
Taisha Miller, I wrote you a song, and I still can't figure just what you did wrong. You were 19 years old with your whole life ahead, and with 23 bullets, 4 cops shot you dead.
All right, we have Erin. She's one of my favorite LA people, even though I'm always, whatever. Anyway.
Your favorite Inglewoodian.
Your favorite Inglewoodian. My favorite Inglewoodian. I call her my big sister.
Oh, that's great. I have one big sister, but I could always use more.
So, you're a Los Angeles journalist, columnist. You've written about the African American experience. Mm-hmm. You have a book, Black Talk, Blue Thoughts, Walking the Color Line, Dispatches from a Black Journalist.
Mm-hmm. Journalista. Get that word right.
Oh, I'm sorry, journalista.
That's okay.
You've written for Salon, Essence, Black Enterprise, but then people can all look these things up online.
I'm kind of online.
You're kind of online. You can all look up. We can all look up these interesting things. I think I know. I remember you. Well, actually, my mom used to point out, "Oh, look, you could be a writer like Aaron," and she'd point out.
Really, I've not heard this before.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No.
Well, she also knew your dad. So Larry.
He's a big Inglewoodian. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big. Yeah, she was like, yeah, he was on the school board. He tried to help, but you know how it is.
That pretty much says it. Yeah. He was on the school board for 10 years. And
yeah. He was. Yeah, I apparently so. I guess I missed that.
Yeah. He didn't understand that education has a lot to do with politics. He was there for education, purpose of education, and kind of got a rude awakening on the school board. So anyway, but
yeah, it's just very well. I also remember you from the butt article.
Oh, that thing just lives on, doesn't it? That was 1996. Almost 97. It was
really?
a long. Yeah. It was. Excuse me. It was 97. Sorry. It was a long time ago. I was younger and more foolish back then.
Oh, okay. But it was one of those first kind of the butt, the hair, whatever. So you kind of started that.
I
so
did.
You could be
I don't know if I started it, but at that time, 1997, people weren't talking a lot about the butt. It was hair is endless, an endless topic.
Yeah.
I was kind of stepping out there with the whole issue of the butt. It was it's more taboo in many ways, but now of course it doesn't feel like that. We have Kim Kardashian, we have just a lot of mainstreaming of the butt, shall we say?
Yeah.
But at the time it seemed fairly. It was pretty. It pushed a lot of buttons, and put it that way.
Well, I remember it stays in my head. So I don't know why that always stays in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, and then I'll bring it up. People are like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right? Really? Yeah. Will that be in my tombstone, Sika Lark? Will that be my contribution to the Black conversation? Well, I always maintain that it wasn't just talking about the butt. It was talking about a lot of other issues that I hope people do remember, as well as the actual butt.
Oh yes, it was. It was an actual. It was more deep. Okay. I'll actually link the article underneath so that people will know it was much more deep than what I'm talking about right now. It's just early in the morning.
Yeah, I understand. It's Saturday, so.
Well, so you're a LA native.
Yeah.
Which is
South Central. I still say South Central. I don't say South LA.
You don't say South LA. Okay.
No, I don't. That was something the City Hall kind of made up in the 90s to kind of rebrand the black part of town because it had gotten a bad reputation after the 92. So they just kind of shortened it to South LA, like turning Kentucky Fried Chicken into KFC. And it's still the same chicken,
It's
right?
still the same thing.
It's still the same thing. And actually, South Central has historical resonance.
Yes.
South Central Avenue was the black part of town. Central Avenue, the south part of it, was the heart of Black LA.
Yes.
And so it never was in itself negative. It's just that we decided it was negative because black people lived there. kind of like Watts, kind of like Inglewood.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I kind of rebel by always saying South Central, because to me it never was negative. It just was something that I think white people were afraid of and decided to, so that they could talk about South Central without sounding racist, they turned it to South LA, which sounds much softer and more generic. And I don't want to be generic. I don't want to be made generic. I want to always be specific. So that's why. Yes, that's a long way of saying yes. I was born and raised in South Central.
You're born and raised in South Central, or your dad was one of the he's been an East Sider, so the East Side of South Central.
He's from New Orleans, but he moved here when he was 9 in 1942.
Yes,
right when the war came here for a job. Like everybody else came from the South to partake of the jobs in L.A. And so he grew up in what was then the segregated part of town, which was the East Side, which was bounded by 4 different streets: Slauson on the north, the Main Street on the west. And so that was his world. And it was better than the South, but it was still pretty segregated. LA was a segregated town.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what the East Side was. I thought it was East LA, which is a whole different kind of East.
Yes. Well, I've always wanted to have this conversation. I'm like, actually there are like 3 East Sides.
There are
3, or actually 4. There's could be 4 East Sides.
Some people consider East Hollywood the East Side, so it kind of moves around. But I didn't really understand what the East Side was until I wrote a story about it for the Times back, and I think it was somewhere in the 90s, because my father would go to these East Side reunions and he never really explained to me what it was. I just I had to start asking questions, because I realized this stuff is not really passed down unless you ask about it. And then I started to realize what the East Side was and the history behind it and all that stuff. And I started to kind of wake up. And my father would always say things like, "I thought I told you that." Like, no, I didn't know. And the East Side the reunion was very like, it was about these guys getting together, but it included the entire population of the East Side. And so that kind of was my portal into the whole like local black history, is my father right in front of me. But he never really, I had to go looking. I had to go asking, because I think he took it for granted.
Well, people don't think it's important, or they think that you just know, because I remember there used to be, remember how like in a lot of rap songs, like, the East Side, the West Side. I'm like, I don't understand. Why do they keep calling Inglewood the West Side? I don't understand.
It West Side?
Inglewood's the West. Well, the East Side is the modern term of the East Side. I would say the 110 freeway would be anything east of the 110 freeway.
Oh, is that what it is?
No. But I mean, it's all part of that same area, but like the East Side and the West Side. So I kind of look at it that way.
I always thought Inglewood was, the LA Times always tried to figure out where it was. So sometimes it was South Bay.
Yeah.
I call it the South Central of South Bay, because it really does it sits between, South Central and the South Bay. And it's not really, it's really neither, and it's both. So to me, it's a very interesting place for all kinds of reasons. But for me, the West Side is like Ladera Heights and west of that. But we could go on all day about geography. But
we can go on all day about what geography is. And what is the West Side and what is the East Side. That's a whole different conversation that we will have at another time. Or actually, we can whatever. But
it's all part of the same discussion about racial stuff.
It is actually
geography is destiny.
I have to say, it's so funny because we both live in Inglewood.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really funny is that I had this organization, environmental organization. And this environmental organization was called the Morningside Park Sustainable City. It died a horrible death. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
Anyway, during the event, I said, we're going to include West Athens and Westmont because that's next to Morningside Park. And we're all like, and I said, we should use this hashtag called, we should use the South LA hashtag, Apparently, that was quite upsetting to some people. They were like, "We're not South LA. We're the South Bay." And I said, "Well, I don't know if anybody knows that."
You ruffled some feathers there, huh?
Well,
yeah. Well, it happens all over LA, though. People want to separate themselves from certain.
Yeah, well, they want to separate from South Central or South LA because of negative connotation.
Well, especially within the black community itself, which is all over the place.
Yeah.
South Central, South LA becomes, it's like being tarred and feathered.
Yes.
I'm anything but South Central because we accept that identity, that negative identity. Like you were saying in your breaking the table. Yeah. We kind of look through everything through the lens of white supremacy. Therefore, South Central is no, I can't be that. I'm not that. I give myself another name. I don't want to be. It's not just the place. It's the people. It's the culture. It's all that stuff. And yet, of course, all of us have relatives or friends or whatever who live in so-called South Central. Like, so what?
Yeah.
But that separation becomes very important because you don't want to be on the wrong side of the line. Right.
But the thing is, the line keeps getting extended. I said Culver City is going to be South Central in about 10 years.
Oh, that'll be funny.
Yeah.
Really?
I always say that.
Does Culver City have a black population?
Yes,
a notable black population? Because it's gotten very expensive, very west side.
They have, well, there's parts of it. They have a Martin Luther King Day or something like that.
They do. At the behest, I think there's a city council member who pushed for it.
Yeah.
You could say some progressive white communities have a Martin Luther King Day, but who always shows up? Black people.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's why I said that's going to happen.
I don't tend to see a lot of white folks out at the King Parade, but maybe that'll change.
No, I always mess with Culver City. I always say that.
Oh.
I said, I think it's funny.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But maybe that's not it. So how has LA changed since the 90s?
Oh, my goodness.
Even in the 90s, I keep forgetting that's like almost 20 years ago now.
More than that. Well, I started writing in 92.
Yes.
I mean, officially. I was writing before then. I was writing for a very small publication called Accent LA, which was a monthly black news magazine, kind of like Morningside Park Chronicle.
Well, I was actually going to bring that up.
Yeah, and I loved it, but it was like an not underground, because we had a circulation of about 35,000. We were actually giving the Sentinel a run for its money.
Yeah.
And we were running it out of an apartment in Mid-City. We didn't even talk about Mid-City, but anyway.
Yeah.
And then 92, the civil unrest happened, and suddenly I found myself working for the LA Times because they realized they didn't have enough reporters covering the hood. Yeah. So I was sort of fortunate. I jumped from a very small publication I didn't really have much journalism experience. I was a creative writer.
Yeah.
And didn't want to sully myself with journalism,
Yeah.
But I also wanted to sort of marry sort of activism with writing, and that's what journalism is to me. Mm-hmm. So I got on to this very big paper. I was very excited. I thought I was going to change the conversation, change the world, change LA.
Yeah.
And that section that I wrote for, that the Times recruited me for, died 3 years later because they didn't have much commitment to, this experiment of really covering South Central, because it was still South Central then. And they sort of abandoned it. And so I ended up going to the LA Weekly, which I worked there for 9 years, and I really enjoyed it there. But unfortunately, my writing didn't change LA. In fact, I think I keep saying this as I look further and further back, as we get further and further away from the 90s. Yeah. I think 92 was the last time that there was really a conversation in LA and in the country about black communities and what we're going to do. And we really had a conversation about the issues that drove the unrest. What happened after that? I think what happened was we got some police reforms. Yeah. And now whenever we do these 10-year, 20-year anniversaries of the civil unrest, we talk about, the police are much better. We don't talk about the root issues. We don't talk about the root causes. We don't talk about why black people got into the streets, why they were so angry, why there was a spontaneous uprising, which to me at the time, I was very excited. Being a native, I'd never seen people in the streets excited about anything. Yeah. Not in my part of town. So I really thought it was the beginning of the continuation of the revolution in the 60s. But what happened after 92, there was this law and order lockdown. Mm-hmm. And that became, and of course, incarceration was going up at the time. And so that was sort of the end of that 60s conversation. I think it really closed in 92. And we've been trying to open it back up ever since. And we keep getting things like Ferguson. We keep getting these eruptions. And we just do not connect them to even what happened 20 years ago. And it's just it's exhausting. And I feel like I've been writing the same story for 22 years, which is what I think Hemingway said. He was always trying to write one story. And I feel like I'm writing one story, which is fine. Yeah. But it does get kind of frustrating.
No, but I understand exactly what I can understand it. Because, it just has something that the conversation. And what people learned from like the 92 rebellion was, let's see, what we'll learn is how we can make it so people won't get up again.
Right. More police.
Instead of making it so that we'll actually have the conversation, we'll make it so that it's okay. That if the conversation happens, we're going to shut it down.
It's containment.
It's containment.
It's not really about, let's step back and hear what people have to say and really get at what the problem is. But, and the problem is, since we're always stuck in that place of containment, we don't get to the other issues that you talk about, which is, arts, culture, the other stuff that is not about survival and just establishing your place in the world. It's about all those other things that make life happen.
Well, I think another thing, and this is a point that I think I actually got this phrase from you. I got a phrase from you. So
I'm dying to hear it.
No,
I want residuals.
You want residuals?
Yeah, it's still a capitalist community. It's capitalist society.
It is. But in '92, we were black.
I think so.
We were black. We were African American, black.
Oh yeah.
Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we got to around the aughts, we became like these people of color. Okay.
And then when did that happen?
We became like, we don't really need a black person. We'll just get any random person of color. And so then the black conversation just went away because it got
subsumed. It got absorbed into the people of color
conversation.
Well, you bring up a really good point because I think what also happened in '92, the reaction to the problems of people, to the specific problems of black people, because they were very specific.
Yeah.
Suddenly it was like, how can we all get along?
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm thinking that's not really the problem. Suddenly it was about how, suddenly it seemed to me that the problems of black people and the problems of Koreans and the problems of Latinos were all sort of put together in one space. And suddenly it became all about multiculturalism.
Yeah.
And that kind of, that diminished the conversation about racial justice and white supremacy and all that stuff that really was underneath, really was what drove the uprising. And suddenly it was everyone had equal problems and equal share in the conversation. I have no problem with roundtabling and multiculturalism and human relations. That's fine. But what it does is sort of it soft pedals our issues. It soft pedals our problems, which are different from Korean people, different from immigrants.
Yeah.
It's different.
And
the problem is we started just, and that's when we started really back then.
Mm-hmm.
We started entering into this post-racial idea, which sounds really like groovy and utopian, but what it really is more racism, because it just kind of diminishes our problems.
Well, we occupy a different space. That's what you said. I got that. I got that from Aaron. When I say black people occupy a different space in racism,
all to ourselves,
because it's really important to say that, because that's a way of explaining it. Because I think that having the words to say certain things and go, okay, well, how can I explain this so that people can understand without people kind of going like, well, it's just about black people. No, it's not just about that. It's that we have a different place in America.
And we always have. And we still have. And the thing is now in 2014, now if you even say what you just said, which is black people occupy a different space, you get people saying, you're racist. You're actually pointing out a difference. How dare you? But somehow it's okay if you are, say, Korean or you're Latino or whatever, you stand up and kind of affirm your space.
Yes.
People applaud you.
Yeah.
But if we now these days stand up and affirm our space, we are part of the problem. We're being divisive.
Yeah.
We're being we're being retro. It's very interesting to me how we are judged simply by standing up and saying, we have different issues. People are saying, you're not on the team.
Yeah.
You don't get to say that. And of course, so it's almost like this we're encouraged to sort of self-erase, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that shouldn't make sense to anybody. And you should always resist that. But we are told, and it's not just like in the realm of, conversation. It's also like in terms of getting a job, in terms of applying for grants, just that stuff. You are not allowed to be black.
No.
You have to sort of talk in code language. I'm for everybody. I'm for my Latino brothers. And by the way, I wanted you to understand, I'm for my Latino brothers and sisters. Yeah. And there is some overlap in our issues, particularly in Inglewood, but we still occupy a very specific space. And we don't get to talk about what matters to us. And that is very repressive to me. So as a writer, the least I can do is to be specific and get out, and to keep saying we have a specific space. And that's really all I've been trying to say for all of my public writing life. Because you know what, that lack of permission to talk about who we are and like talk about our specificity really, I think, bears on our personal lives. It represses people. And then we don't know how to talk to each other. I find this kind of, I find that black people are so used to not talking about themselves publicly, they don't know how to talk about themselves privately.
No, there are people.
You know what I'm saying?
There are people who censor themselves. I'll be in an all-black environment, and I'll see other black people censoring themselves because they don't want to appear racist by talking about black
to
people.
each other.
And it's just black people in the room. And I think that would probably blow everybody's mind if they knew that was actually happening. Like, it's the same conversation, whether you're there, whether the white people are there
that's
or
that's what
not.
supremacy is. White people don't have to be there. They left the room a long time ago.
Yes, exactly.
They left the room a long time ago, but they're still there. And I think one last thing, somebody pointed this out to me, and it's so true. In all the discussions about Ferguson,
Yes.
somebody said, let's stop talking about the race problem. It's a white supremacy problem. Because when you say race problem, it makes it seem like you said in your opening, it's our problem. Like, we're creating the problem.
Yes.
No, we're not creating the problem.
Yeah.
It's a white supremacy problem. But if you say white supremacy, then you really get blowback.
Yeah,
You truly get then
People
can
don't
you
like
imagine? No, they don't. Well, black people will censure you. Shh. You can't say that. You're not. But what we're thinking about is our own acceptance into society. We have not integrated yet. We are not assimilated.
Yeah.
We are not assimilated still. Obama's not assimilated. Okay?
That's kind of amazing.
If he's not assimilated, I know I'm not assimilated. Right?
Yeah.
And no hope for me. No hope for you.
Yeah, and you live in Inglewood.
So I might as well just say what I want.
You might as well just say what you want. You might as well just give up.
I have.
And,
but that's kind of liberating to just give up any hope of being respectable, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
It's not
so
happening today.
let's just see what we really feel. But that's a really hard proposition. It's a much more subtle kind of repression than we've experienced in the past. When my father on the east side, the repression was obvious out there, and so but at least you had a space. You had a space that you went home to, and you could kind of be whoever. We've lost that space. That's the space we lost. We got physical space. People moved it out from the east side into wherever they wanted to, mid-city, west side, whatever. But they lost their personal space. And I think that's really what we black people haven't really recognized, because we're still too busy trying to integrate and assimilate.
That's a really time wasting activity that people spend a lot of time on. Even when you're talking, I have to let people know a lot of times that I'm talking about black people. Like you have
to keep reminding.
Yeah,
it's like station identification every 2 minutes, right?
I'm talking about black people, so you know,
because you have to point that out.
I mean,
otherwise it's people. I'm sorry, people of color, which isn't who is that?
I refuse to use that term.
I'm
not.
I have a friend who says humans of hue.
No,
he's making a joke.
Well, I want to talk about my other jokes that I have.
Oh,
but you did independent journalism. You done mainstream journalism. I mean, have you ever thought about possibly going back doing independent stuff again? Or
I have. Well, now I freelance. I mean, there are no jobs in journalism, by the way. So everybody's out there writing on their own. But it all depends on who you're writing for.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Being a journalist has been sort of an exercise in attempting to assimilate, because, like, say if you're pitching something to Atlantic Magazine or New Yorker, it has to sound a certain way. Versus, like, if you turn around, you pitch for Essence, that's actually harder. Essence, I don't know, their language is very black middle class. Anyway, so you always have to modulate your voice. I mean, for the purpose of writing, but in the end, I can only really write like me, which has not been to my advantage, business wise.
You actually, I think the thing is so not strange. It's actually good. You I read your writing for a long time before I actually met you.
Yeah.
But your writing and your personality is exactly the same. There's no, you're not trying to be some people have a persona, they're trying to
writing voice.
Yeah, some kind of writing voice. I mean, your writing voice and you are the same person. Which
that's thank you. That's a high compliment.
I'm just she actually acts just like this. They're like, well, couldn't she be a little bit more positive? I'm like, she is.
Yeah. We could have a whole other show about positivity.
I'm like, that's actually how she acts. If you read it and you were in a coffee shop, you'd be like, that's Erin, because it's the exact same conversation.
It's funny, I think one of those radical things I've done within black, and I'm only talking about black people, station identification, they are disturbed. They like my writing, but they're kind of disturbed that they see me as not being positive enough. Because in other words, when you are a black writer occupying public space, you should be an advocate. And I understand the advocacy argument, because we've been so beaten down by other kinds of public writing that we have to counter that. At the same time, I think we have to be complex. So we have to look at the whole picture, and we have to explore things and not always just kind of run a PR campaign to always lift ourselves up. I understand the tradition of uplift, but that kind of gets in the way of truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think we have not really gotten past that tradition of uplift, which I understand the need for, and we still need it, but at the same time, we also need to complicate the picture and, give ourselves more dimension than what we're used to giving ourselves. It's all really tough, and it's much harder than people think it is. It's not just a matter of being positive or negative. It's just being just inclusive of all the things that we feel, and we just don't have permission to do that. Well, I don't think so. Some things, like you said, are respectable to us, and certain things we can't talk about. And I just don't see anything. I don't see anything as being of taboo. I mean, we should talk about everything.
Well, I think positive is anything that moves anything forward. If you're moving something, if you're moving the world forward, that's positive. If you're keeping everything the same.
Well, it's hard when you keep having things happen like, the problem is something like a Bill Cosby erupts or something, some really bad PR thing. We have to kind of get, we have to just focus on that. And anything we say that's not positive is more for the enemy, right? So there are a lot of battles we're still fighting. But there are these new issues that we have to accommodate too. So it's very difficult being black. It really is. Yeah. It's much easier being white. We don't have to think about any of this stuff. When you're black, you have to make 1,000 decisions every day. How do I sound? How do I talk? What do I say? And it's kind of we should all have free psychotherapy.
Well, even ask people
reparations. Even free psychotherapy
and reparations. Ask people. The thing I thought was really shocking is just asking people where they're from.
Where they're from.
That for a lot of people who are black is really challenging, especially if they're from if they view South LA in a negative light and they're from the area. They really at first I didn't think it was a big deal, but it became it's actually, you can look at some people and it's like, whoa, I don't know what to say.
Really? Yes. Now that's a new development. Yeah. I very proudly say I'm from South Central because we also wrestle with that question of black authenticity. If you're not actually. Back in the 90s when, gangster rap was all the rage, I guess it still is, being from the hood was like a sign of, authenticity, which is another kind of false identity thing we deal with. But if people are now reluctant to say where they're from, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, you should try that one day. Just for fun. No, I'm not saying. That's actually very sad.
Wow. I gotta talk about that off air.
But I think oh my gosh. Okay, we've actually run out of time, Erin.
Oh no, really? Oh
yeah.
Wow.
So, but
I gotta come back.
Yeah, you did come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you so much for talking with me, Erin. I'm glad I didn't really talk that much at all.
Thanks for having me, Tika Lark. That was really fun, and I really do look forward to coming back.
Okay, cool.
Conversation goes on.
Yeah, and so up next we're going to have Jeremy Tavalon, and we're going to have a break. And this is LA Talk Live, and you can catch us on 365, iTunes R&B, and the LA Talk Live website. It's time to rise. Life full of maggots, niggas and flies. Trash, ash, and cash. Where does the truth lie? As the youth cries, hate subsides. The planet is terrorized, leaving no place to hide from that third eye. Downward. God is a mirror in the sky. Color outside the lines. All in time, all this time in the mind. Unfulfilled ambition, broken ladders to climb. Red wine, white lines, blue collar crime, stars got us blind. Nation on the decline.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hey everybody, it's your man Sabir Bey back on your airwaves, inviting you to join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Sabir Bey Show, discussing history, law, and hip-hop. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Sabir Bey Show, exclusively on latalklive.com. You also can catch us on iTunes Radio and R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch us and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
This is Brett Chapin.
And this is Dorothy Dillingham Blue, inviting you to join us every Saturday at noon Pacific Standard Time for our show, La La Land Talk.
Join us as we talk with some of the top talent in LA. Artists' untold stories, your phone calls, and live on-location broadcasts have made La La Land one of the best sources in LA for everything entertainment.
So don't forget to tune in to La La Land Talk.
Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com.
Saturdays at noon Pacific time. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter, twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dick and Sharon, inviting you to join us every Monday at 3 Pacific for LA Progressive Live.
Join us as we cover the progressive landscape both locally and across the nation.
So don't forget to tune in to LA Progressive Live every Monday at 3 Pacific.
Exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, AHA Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio.
Or just watch and listen directly at latalklive.com and LA Progressive Live. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live and LA Progressive Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Tika Lark Fleming inviting you to join me every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for MP Chronicle Presents The Blk Grrrl Show. Join us as we discuss politics, pop culture, and the other side of Black LA. So don't forget to tune in to MP Chronicle Presents The Blk Grrrl Show every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
I should have stayed at Margie's where the people are friendly, where the music is warm and the beer.
Hello, this is Tika Lark Fleming with The Blk Grrrl Show. Our next guest is going to be Jeremy Tevlon, but before then, I want to talk about, what do you call it? Yes, Small Business Saturday, and tell you to check out Zoe's Ventique on Adams Sweetly. She's actually online. Cielo Galleries, which is a gallery space, also production film place actually on the east side on Maple Street, and Afropuff, which has a whole bunch of cute little knickknacks and stuff. So for your holiday season, remember to shop small and shop local and shop black. All right, so up next is Jeremy Tevlon. Jeremy Tevlon is the author of many books. Monster Chef is one of them. Also, All the Trouble You Need, Understand This, and Los Angeles Times bestseller, Dead Above Ground. He's a poet, screenwriter. He was born in New Orleans and raised in Los Angeles. You live in Altadena, right?
Yeah.
You live in Altadena. And you also have, I guess, a common literature online website called Literature for Life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I'm kind of go off the beaten path and ask, what's your favorite coffee shop, Jerry?
My favorite coffee shop
in Los Angeles.
I used to, when I lived in LA, I used to go to Sisters on Crenshaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But since I live in Altadena, I tend to write at places where I can, be anonymous, and so I tend to go from one Starbucks to another. Because I can get the New York Times there, and I can drink unlimited amounts of coffee if I buy one. So I got it rigged, and after I buy 12 cups of coffees, I get to have anything I want. So
anything you want.
Yeah, pretty much. They give you that freebie, that 12th one. You can get the $14 sandwich. Starbucks is expensive, so I try to work it.
Yeah, well, the sad thing about the whole coffee thing, I remember I used to go to Onyx on Vermont in Los Feliz, and I was just like, I'm never going to Starbucks ever. I think I'm at Starbucks like 3 times a day. I mean, I think most writers write at Starbucks, which is like a sad commentary of like, we were all like, I'm going to be supporting local businesses, and I'm going to go to Tsunami and all these small coffee shops that are now dead. But that's okay though. We
killed them.
We killed them. All right. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Kendrick Lamar killing rappers, right?
So you have so many books, but you have a lot of books about cocaine. What is that about?
Hey, it just came out on audiobooks now. So if somebody wants a free copy, like my Facebook page, and I'll give you a free audio copy. You know what? I'm very straight. You know, my brothers were dope fiends, but I was always too cheap to do cocaine. Well, actually, when it was free, I discovered that it just made me feel like I was psychotic. Like I was wanted to kill a guy over a ping pong game, and I was like, I can never do this. So I was way too cheap to get involved in almost anything, really.
You are. You're like a very straight guy. You're not like one of these people that are like, I know why he keeps writing about drugs, because he obviously. You're totally not even that way. Like, you're not giving me that impression. I know a lot of people too.
No, the best compliment I ever got was about writing. I got interviewed by a guy named Michael. I forgot his last name, at KPFK.
Yeah.
A long time ago for Understand This. And he was talking about the book and a handsome African-American man. And he had a little bit of scar tissue on his face and his eyes a little red, but he was very smart. Some of the best questions I ever got. And it turned out that he used to, he said, so how did you get out of the life? And I said, what life? And he said, well, the cocaine, the dope life. And I said, well, I never did it. That wasn't me. That was my, brothers and stuff. But, I was very straight. So, and then he was killed like a couple of months later. So it was a real tragedy, because I hope to stay in touch with him, and hopefully he would interview me more about my books.
So that's, you write fiction, which, a lot of people, I know a lot of agents were like, well, we don't really like fiction. We like, nonfiction. Why do you write fiction? Why do you think it's so important? I mean, why do you think it's so important? Because I think, of course, obviously, I view fiction as important. But why do you think it's?
Because I can be honest in fiction when I'm talking about myself. I write essays. I used to write a lot of essays for the LA Times and LA Weekly, and there's usually a strong autobiographical element in a lot of my work. But the thing is that with fiction, I feel like I can be honest. Where when I'm writing about myself in a more autobiographical sense, I know I'm lying my ass off. So. Because I'm selling something. I'm selling me. And, so I create a voice, and I enjoy it. It's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. But I try to keep my narcissism at a low level, because most people I know who really indulge in, the personal essay, sometimes they get, it's them. It's not about the reader necessarily, and you review things. It's like a dance. With fiction, I figure, I don't need to... I can be honest. I don't need to lie so much about myself. So, I don't know. I'm sounding pretty persnickety here, but
isn't that strange that in fiction you can actually be more honest than you can in?
It's a thin membrane of between fault. I can't. When I think about my one book, Dead Above Ground, about my mother. I'm supposedly it's everything she told me about a cousin of mine who wanted to date a guy in the 40s who. And my mother said my grandmother said, you can't date that man, he kills women. So my cousin said, oh, he's so good looking, I can't pass it up. So she went out with him, and eventually she tried to break it off, and my grandmother said, what do you think is going to happen? He said, well, I'm going to leave him, so I think he's going to kill me. And he did kill her. So all that was like what I heard. I just started jotting it all down. And
that's book's Dead Above Ground, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to, because people might want to look that up.
Yeah. Well, my mother, I'm at my mom's house, and I'm writing down everything she says. I got the tape recorder trying to pretend I'm a journalist. And then she said, well, then they had to have the funeral mass at the morgue in New Orleans, because, her body was so decomposed, they found her floating in Lake Pontchartrain in a trunk. So I heard something dripping, so I looked up from, praying, and I could see from the corner of the coffin river water dripping. And I was like, damn, I don't need to record anything. So I just turned it off, and I just started inhabiting my mother's voice. So basically, I'd say the thing about fiction writing is that, I made money, I make money at this. It's weird. They pay me to basically inhabit other characters and to, live somebody else's life. And I have no idea, to me, it's like magic. So that I managed to get away with it this long without anything really bad happening to me. So it's been cool.
No, I think that's one thing, especially like within, you write about Black life, not exactly Black life, but your characters are Black, and because but it's not like about Black life. but fiction and kind of like, not that death and drugs are fun, but you kind of have, you're kind of, how can I say this? You're talking about fiction, you're talking about noir, that kind of, I mean, why do you think that for Black people that's important, for within the Black, I guess, literary, arena or, section of the world? Why do you think that's important? But don't you think you should be writing like, we should all rise up and why did you just chose that path instead of the other path?
I write about what I usually think about. And when my first novel was set at Locke High School, where I taught for 5 years, and my students had a nervous breakdown, and it was the first time I really thought about that, like this idea of all this pressure on this young Black man, where he just cracked up at school, and he was a handsome guy, a good athlete, a good student. And I finally found out from his girlfriend, he witnessed his friend murdered, and that kind of set it all off. So I was interested in sort of exploring that aspect of it, not murder and the mayhem, because I had dealt with that as myself as a kid, friends being killed and guns being pulled on me, but the psychological pressures that young Black men are under, and so I got interested in that. And then the next book I wrote about, it's pretty autographical about growing up in L.A., and then the next book was Dead Above Ground, written the voice of my mom, about the Creole community in New Orleans in the 40s and the late 40s. So I tried not to repeat myself. I have a book set in Santa Barbara, with that huge Black community there, and so I'm making a joke there. Is like
now that's what I'm asking. Like, is that a joke?
There's been 1,500 Black people in Santa Barbara for the last 30 years. Really, when one disappears, somebody else comes and replaces them.
And they go to UC Santa Barbara?
Well, my ex-wife was born in Santa Barbara. She actually integrated Montecito.
Okay.
So I got to know that community a little bit. And, eventually we bought our first house because there's a literate Black woman from Florida who made the best sweet potato pies and made kind of a sweet potato pie fortune, and left us some money to buy a house. So, I've tried not to repeat myself. I think that the Black experience is incredibly broad and cool. I occupy, the kind of poot butt, fanboy nerd thing on the corner.
Yeah.
And so it's been really good to me. I believe in their writer gods. And if you humble yourself in front of the writing and you try to do your best work and not engage in too much self-aggrandizement, the writing gods smile on you. So that's my new fantasy.
We do have like a broad, our culture is broad. We have a broad, we have just like everybody else, but it's just like so rarely that you get to meet a person who actually kind of actually does art based on that, on that. So I'm looking at your book, Monster Chef, and this has been reviewed at the LA Times, and what else? What other reviews? It's what reviewed.
Book list. I mean, it's gotten some good reviews.
You got some good reviews. I mean, how hard is it for? Now in this new digital age, how challenging is it to get published?
It's really easy to get published. It's but getting published by somebody that pays you. That's,
That's
the
important
trick.
Part. Yeah.
It's very strange. First of all, I've had an African American editor for basically all my books. A couple of books I haven't. One book, Living for the City, was a Latina fiction editor, and she said, "This is the first book we ever published at this press incommunicado I've ever liked." It's like growing up. It was like my life growing up on the east side of L.A. And so usually it's a person of color. Publishing is extremely racist. It's beyond. It's a humorous. Some of the reviews I've gotten for this book is like, why is this dude talking about this stuff? Why are these people are not of interest? Why isn't he developing his characters? And I just feel like, oh, white folks, stop reading this stuff. If you don't like it, don't read it. Don't pretend you care. So even in Los Angeles, which is an incredibly diverse city, those of us that are out there trying to do that work, I network my ass off. I know like so many different people, but still, if you just don't get taken seriously, so you just get out there and just do better work, and then eventually somebody go, oh, well, this person's made this huge contribution. Yeah, where were you when I needed you? So.
That is, and I think too, because your book, it's about a chef, and it's about a chef that had some issues. I mean, they think it's not black enough. Like they expect a more black book. Is that because I've run into that. Like, are you not embodying the blackness that they expect to see? Like, is that too shallow for them? They think like, even though in a way it's like it is deep to have a black character. He's like a chef for like people who have money. I mean, and it's like, well, that's not the true black experience. He should be working at McDonald's somewhere, at the shoe warehouse or something.
I think the whole idea offends them. I think that the idea of a kind of literary fiction that resonates beyond literary fiction. I mean, not that many people read literary fiction. I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So, since the book is about a guy who works for insane celebrity, loosely based on, a extremely famous entertainer who seemed to be pretty out there and insane and self-loathing in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson. And so I think it got some of those people checking it out, and then they just didn't think it functioned the way it should function.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like the New York Times would totally ignore that because they don't see what's in it for them. The reviewers go, look, the black person is trying to write in something that is beyond their purview. So let's move on,
That's I could totally see that happening. I mean, I could, how does Los Angeles kind of inform your writing? How does growing up in Los Angeles inform your writing?
Well, I'm a Faulkner fan. I grew up in it's the only place I never called my mother mother. I called her mama. I called her mama until I was like 17, and so I would find that in Faulkner, and kind of the brutality of the South and some of the things about Southern culture where the story was everything. And to be able to know a place very well was extremely important. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
So how does L.A.
Oh, okay, L.A.
Inform?
Well, it was the same. It was a very similar thing. Like Faulkner was, was like right about this postage stamp size community. That's the advice he was given, and I realized I grew up with all kind of characters. Dudes. My brothers. I was younger than my brother, my oldest brother, by 10 years. So I was a little turv. I never even had a name. Little turv. What you doing? Little turv. Where are your brothers at? Little turv. So I would, hang out on the corner. I would listen to them talk. Very deeply about stuff like the racism in H.P. Lovecraft, like when I was like 10 or 11. And they'd talk about World War II, Vietnam, the importance of like space exploration. These are all black men, And as long as I didn't say anything, they'd let me sit there and listen. So part of it was just wanting to preserve what I heard. And so I've never really got too far beyond that. I mean, I try to preserve what I hear. I was in New Orleans for the Word Music Festival, which is really cool. I met Stanley Crouch there, and we talked about sagging.
Yeah.
So I heard a woman discussing the fact that I was Creole. She's like, to some white women, there was very, very few black people. Sometimes it's heartening to go to an event where you really are the one among the many. So the woman was saying, he left Los Angeles to move to left New Orleans to move to Los Angeles to escape, to find a better life. I was like 4. My parents took me, and
to escape
find a better life in LA, right in time for the riots. And so I just like, God, it's refreshing. So. Yeah. So.
But this idea, like they even write your own. They're writing their stories, there's ideas. They don't even know who you are. Haven't even bothered to talk to you. That's just unbelievable. But I think that you're kind of moving on from that. I think that you're writing, and a lot of people's writing in Los Angeles, Southern California, who are LA-based writers. They kind of remind me a lot of Southern Gothic. I call them Southern California Gothic writers. I mean, it seems like that's almost becoming like a genre in a way, a little bit, just because of I don't know.
Well, I think people are just trying to find. I mean, if you have an idea of audience, which is always amusing, that you can find the audience. You try to find something that resonates. Literary fiction is very class specific. There's a certain number of African American writers who can get away with it. But, most people don't make any money at that at all. And that's, it's the life. I mean, the hours are great. The insecurity is vast. But, you get, and, the writing has done everything in my life that's been good has come from writing. My house, my wife, my kids, all of my experiences. Recently I was in Shanghai on a Writers Association there. I just want to say that I'm more comfortable in Shanghai than I'm in Santa Monica. And the other thing is the cops don't have guns. So I act pretty weird. I have a Nike Fuel Band, so I try to get 10,000 steps in every day. So I'm always walking in circles, amusing the Hungarians, the guys that were also there, and because I'm always moving around circles. In LA, I probably get shot, by a cop. Like, why are you doing that? So show your hands. In Shanghai, they don't pay any attention to you. First of all, they even stop you for traffic violations. So why I'm in Shanghai is basically because I'm a writer. And so, again, everything good in my life has come from, writing and reading.
I want to know, what do you feel that there should be a separate category for African American writers in like in the bookstore? Like, do you think that should happen or not? Or I mean, I don't really have a problem with it, because sometimes I want to be able to find people, and I can't find people with their names anymore. Everybody now, because of the whole Bill Cosby thing, they name their kids like Bill or Jane. I can't find us because your last name is Smith. I can't find you. So for the category.
Well, as long as they have you in both sections. My problem was that, like at Borders, they had the African American section, and they might not have you in the fiction section. So it's like
they have you like in urban lit, or
they just wouldn't have you anywhere else than the African American section. Yeah. So so I would like it when they they categorize, and they also realize that you belong with all the writers, and if it's all marketing. So and marketing is exciting. So right now what we deal with writers is is that anybody's a B-level actor will get some big book deal, like C-level actor, but you can be writing your ass off and have some reading people followers, and it's just hard to get a deal. So but it's always been that way. It will always be that way. Writers that you got to be passionate. It's like something else you can't do. I will say that trying to sell a book, just for those that are interested in writing, if you are in New York on a corner, how they sell stuff on a corner in New York, so you can have some really nicely, wrapped books, really good books, and you could have steaming hot wet dog turds. And I know this for a fact. You can sell twice as many of those steaming wet hot dog turds than the books, because you ask somebody to read a book, you're asking them to do work. If you have steaming hot dog turds that are nicely wrapped, there's utility for those things, usefulness. I mean, you can give it to someone you don't like. It's like a surprise. So, but when you give a book, you're giving work. So, so you got to be ready for that. The problem with writing workshops is that they affirm people, and writing is not about affirmation. Writing is about survival. I mean, writing is about doing your best work and propitiating the writing gods. It's not about having people going, "I love what you do. Don't make me read it." So, if you're friends, if you want to have a writing workshop, just hang out with your friends, and if they start asking, to see what you're doing, then you're doing something good. But if you got to beg them to read it, it's not happening.
So it's not that you're just a genius and no one gets you.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the belief. I'm a genius, no one gets who I am.
It's never wrong with having that. Just don't force people to read your stuff,
Yeah. So where can, in regards to the Literature for Life, can you give me a little more information on that?
Okay, when I taught high school, I used to hate the textbooks, and also that you never saw black kids, you never saw Latino kids, you never saw Asian kids. Basically, these books were very expensive, and students would just face them and all that. So I would just photocopy things and bring things in. So I just thought that instead of, and all these writers that I knew in LA, I would photocopy stories of my friends. So I thought, why don't we have this resource? Why can't we create a literary magazine where everything could be used for educational purposes that will reflect the quality and diversity of Los Angeles? So that's what the thing is, basically. It's like a magazine with a back end is a library. So eventually, if you got like a gay Guatemalan surfer kid, you could probably find a story that might resonate with him. Or if you have stories about the experience of moving from, let's say, the South, black kids moving from the South coming out to places like Los Angeles. Maybe, our stories will be tagged for age appropriateness and also content. Teachers can collate their own readers, and it would be from this area, So there's a new study that said black kids see themselves about in their post and secondary education about 3% of the time. Latino kids, like 1% of the time. Asian kids, they don't see themselves. And this is in our public schools. In private schools, it's all over the place. They don't have the same strictures. So trying to get literary culture, our shared literary culture into the classroom, I think is incredibly important. And when you hear the Common Core curriculum, we have our stories, we'll, meet Common Core curriculum. We have curriculum for our stories. When you get, but when you look at the stuff that's happening now, when it's all about, menus, and kids just need to have a kind of facility with reading, but don't need to be passionate readers. That just drives me nuts. Because you're dooming the kids to a life. They're just not going to realize the potential if they're not passionate readers.
No, they're not. And I think reading is so important because you can't write if you can't write. You can't understand things. You can't understand politics. You can't understand. It's very, that's a challenging thing. So where can we find your work or find you? If we wanted to go online or something like that, do we follow you on Twitter?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I got an author page. If you want to come and like me, first person that likes me today, I'll give them the audio copy of Cocaine Chronicles.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go. I already have a copy. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was great talking to you. Next week, we're going to have Gary Dauphine, who is, I call him, he's kind of like the grandfather of Black Twitter. Remember Black Planet? Yeah, he was the editor of Black Planet. And we're going to have Carolyn Castaño, who is a visual artist from the Rampart area. So this is Tika Lark Fleming with the Blk Grrrl Show. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Can't help it, I was born and raised on them. That's right, every morning after slop the hogs and maybe getting off, humping the Johnny Hooker. Get it on. They say I'm different 'cause I'm a piece of sugar cane, and when I kick my legs, I got real bomb. My great grandpa was a blues lover. He be rocking his moonshine to Baby King and Jimmy. Rock on that. And that's why they say I'm different. And that's why they say I'm strange. I'm talking about Big Mama Pump. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Lightning Hopkins. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Howlin' Wolf. Talk about it, talk about it.
There are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.